All right, Dave, you know I'm starting with you. We're going to get to Matt Gaetz in a moment, fellow Floridian. But Pam Bondi, his replacement, what do you make of this pick?
Look, two very different politicians between Matt Gaetz and Pam Bondi. What I will tell you is I think Pam Bondi sails through. Now, that's very different than in 2017, where she was being considered for an administration post, but there were concerns that maybe she would not be confirmed. There was controversy around a donation that Donald Trump gave to her political committee at a time when, as Attorney General of the state of Florida, she was considering whether or not to bring charges against Trump University. And in 2017, those politics seemed too toxic. But in a world of Matt Gaetz and Pete Hegseth, maybe those politics aren't too toxic in 2024. The fascinating thing about this, I think, is it isolates Donald Trump's agenda in a way that may or may not play out well for the president-elect. What I mean by that is Matt Gaetz was a toxic mix of unqualified. He was not qualified to run the department. There were questions of his personal fitness related to serious allegations of sexual misconduct with a minor. But then there was also this question of an enemies list. Was Matt Gaetz' agenda to pursue an enemies list? With Pam Bondi, Stephanie, you have someone who's qualified to run the department. Questions of personal fitness probably aren't significant enough to disqualify her for any reason. So now it comes down to a fascinating confirmation hearing where she will be asked, do you think it's appropriate for the Justice Department to be an arm of the executive office of the president? Do you plan as Attorney General to prosecute Liz Cheney, to prosecute Adam Schiff? Do you intend to go after the media? How will you handle Donald Trump kind of pushing the lines here? I think Pam Bondi is being set up to be the Bill Barr of the second administration. And with Bill Barr, you had someone who did all of the president's bidding on Russia and the Mueller report and other issues, but ultimately he had a line he wouldn't cross. I think Pam Bondi is going to be pushed into testing many of these lines, and I think she'll do it. She's gone from a Jeb Bush Republican to a Donald Trump Republican. Is there a line, though, that Pam Bondi won't cross? Maybe so, in a way that Matt Gaetz would have. I think all that will get vetted out at a confirmation hearing.
Joanna, I see you nodding your head. What is your take both on Pam Bondi as the pick and Gaetz pulling out?
Well, my take on it is that we're actually in a new phase of the Trump television. We've had season 1, now we're on to season 2, and I realise there's a new word for it, which I think is politainment. It's half politics, it's half entertainment, isn't it? And what Pam Bondi is again, central casting. We know that Trump has been sitting in Mar-a-Lago. Our Mar-a-Lago patio correspondent has been telling us at the Daily Beast that he's sitting there with his colleagues watching people on television, and how they perform on television, how aggressive they are, how they defend him is essential to how he thinks about how they're going to do.
Okay, I'm so glad you brought this up, because this has been on my mind all week. Because all week long, people are saying, what is this, a made-for-TV cabinet? None of these people are qualified. But from Donald Trump's perspective, the way I see it, he's looking for spokespeople. Right? And all of the people who he's, not all, but many of these people who he's chosen are telegenic. They're good communicators. They get the message out. And if there's a critique of Democrats, or that we've talked about for the last 4 years, Joe Biden got so much done, but they didn't do a great job communicating it, or people didn't know they got it done. And could we be in a situation with Donald Trump where he's not getting much done, or you don't know what he's doing, but he's got these great salespeople out there, which is so fraudulent and not helpful to the American people, potentially great for him in terms of politics?
Well, exactly. First of all, they're characters, right? This is absolutely central casting. And then it's just possible, if one's looking at a positive outcome, that the civil servants behind them get the work done. And then you have people actually selling the story to the American people. But
depending on what the work is.
Yeah, but someone told me something very helpful, which really put it in perspective for me, which was that when Biden and Trump met for the debate, someone at CNN took both President Trump and President Biden into the studio and explained where the cameras were, the microphones. Donald Trump spent 20 minutes looking, analysing, understanding the studio and understanding how he would come across, wanted to know about the lighting. Joe Biden said none of this, came in, was presidential, couldn't have been less interested in either the lighting or where the microphones were or where the camera was. And then he said to the producer who was showing him around, "Would you like a selfie with me?" And again, that failure to take television seriously. Donald Trump came from television. He is a tabloid president, and that's how he's going to govern in this second season of the Donald Trump show.
But of course it's absurd because Joe Biden is responsible for 4 of the largest, most transformative legislative changes over the last few years, but it comes down to TV entertainment, and that's a sad state of affairs.
Well, it comes down to communicating it. If a tree falls in the forest, does it matter if nobody knows about it? I mean, does it matter that he's done this extraordinary work for the American people if they are unable to tell you about it? The voters didn't know about it, or they didn't care because they didn't vote for him.
All right, Vaughn, let's find out about legislative agendas. What else do we need to know about Pam Bondi? A, and B, who is happier about Matt Gaetz? Democrats, who now don't have to have him as the Attorney General, or Republicans, who didn't have to vote him down and get Donald Trump angry?
I think the Democrats, I think my biggest takeaway, if I may, from the day here, Steph, is the fact that Republicans in the U.S. Senate sent a clear message to Donald Trump that he's not going to get everything that he wants, not only in terms of nominees, but potentially legislation in a budget. This is Donald Trump over the course of 9 years who has worked to reshape this Republican Party into his image and effectively has purged most individuals that are reticent to his version of politics or his style of use of power. And yet here, just 2 weeks after he won this 2024 election with the idea that a mandate was in his hands, he tested them. He put up Matt Gaetz to be is picked to be the nominee for the Attorney General. And I think that this is where it becomes a question for Donald Trump about the potential nominees that he has yet to fill for the FBI role, for instance, of who he puts in these positions here, because there are individuals. Mitch McConnell's retiring. He's on his way out. You have Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Bill Cassidy. Those 3 senators voted to convict him in the aftermath of the January 6th attack. They've shown a willingness to stand up to Donald Trump. And so there's a clear indication from some of these Republicans in the U.S. Senate that it's not going to be entirely up to Donald Trump what happens in Washington, D.C. So from that end, Democrats, they have little room for actually bipartisan successes here in these years ahead. And so what they need is at least Republicans to stand up to some extent. And I think that Pam Bondi is somebody who is not as bombastic as a Matt Gaetz, and somebody who I think Democrats may be more keen and eager to try to begin at least a conversation with, understanding she's somebody who credibly worked as an Attorney General for 8 years.
And Vaughn, what's going to go down? Incoming Senate Majority Leader John Thune meeting with Trump tonight at Mar-a-Lago. What are you hearing from at least Thune's camp when it comes to Pete Hegseth and that situation?
Right. I think that, again, this is where John Thune, of the 3 Senate Majority Leader options, was the only one who did not give a firm commitment ahead of the Senate Majority Leader vote to allow recess appointments to be pushed through. And so this is where, for tomorrow, I think John Thune's meeting with Donald Trump is an important one, because Pete Hegseth is somebody who needs, not only for the credibility purposes of these Republican senators who are putting their vote behind somebody like Pete Hegseth, but also to the American public at large that are hearing these allegations. A police report that is coming out from Monterey, California, no charges were ever filed. But this is where I think that John Thune and some of these Republicans have a opportunity 2 months out from Inauguration Day to send a clear message to Donald Trump about the ways in which they feel like they could better work with Donald Trump come January 2025, knowing that they have the same mindset of what they want to accomplish agenda-wise, but personnel-wise, that's where the distinction here, that a message that can be sent effectively from somebody like John Thune.
Dave, here's something that'll give you nightmares before you go to bed. One Republican senator today said that Hegseth's situation is problematic because we already have a sexual assault problem within our military. Do you think enough other senators are going to feel this way? I mean, that's hardcore.
Yeah, it's a fascinating question, Stephanie, for this reason, because Donald Trump himself has just won re-election having been found civilly liable for sexual abuse and was fined to nominate Hegseth and Gaetz. And so the question, I think, for our American culture, for the voters, is has the bar been lowered when it comes to who we elevate to positions of leadership? That Hegseth will now test that. Gaetz arguably tested that. And I think to Vaughn's point, we talk about the nominees, but this is really about Donald Trump himself. And the withdrawal of Matt Gaetz is really the most embarrassing failure thus far of a lame duck presidency. Donald Trump now realizing that he doesn't have the capital among senators that he thinks. And so I think the spotlight now turns to Hegseth. I think among the others, most of the others will sail through confirmation. Hegseth now maybe gets the scrutiny that Gaetz was getting, and he deserves it. I actually wonder, and I know he's got his Fox News background and experience, but I'm not sure that Hegseth is going to be ready for a confirmation hearing, excuse me, when it comes to the qualifications of serving as Secretary of Defense. Does he actually have the command of what it requires to serve as Secretary of Defense, to oversee a department, as you point out rightly, that is suffering from many challenges, including not only the incidents of sexual assault, but also Hegseth's personal views on the role of women in the military? This could actually be a defining confirmation hearing where the nomination of Hegseth really exposes some glaring problems. Donald Trump has actually made a lot of errors in the first steps of his lame duck presidency. Hegseth might be the next one that we see really face some challenges.